Hey, if you're not careful, these CR 1 and lower creatures could kill your D&D party. By far, one of the most underrated deadly creatures is the nilbog. A nilbog is a spirit that was once part of the goblin trickster god. This spirit goes and possesses a goblin and then transforms it into a nilbog. And while a goblin is possessed, they have some pretty crazy abilities. Firstly, if you try and damage a nilbog, you have to succeed on a DC 12 charisma save, which for low level parties is a toss-up, and if you fail, you have to spend your entire action next turn praising the nilbog. But let's say you get past the charisma saving throw and can actually damage this brat. Well, it can use its reaction reversal fortune to reduce that damage to 0 and then regain hit points. The nilbog's damage isn't fantastic, but honestly it doesn't need to be. With all these defensive abilities, your party can really struggle to damage this thing in any meaningful way. But after all of this, let's say you kill the nilbog. Well, the spirit leaves the dead goblin's body and goes to possess another goblin. And by the way, this spirit is immune to all damage and conditions, so the only way to truly defeat a nilbog is to murder every goblin within range. Yeah, this joke creature can be the doom of a low-level party if you're not careful. Up next though, we have the Stone Cursed. Resembling a person turned to stone, the Stone Curse can do just that to your party. After dealing a whopping 2d8 plus 3 damage, a target creature must make a Constitution save or begin to be turned to stone. If they fail the save twice in a row, they are petrified for 24 hours. For lower level parties, a 17 AC provides it more than enough protection. And because it has advantage on opportunity attacks, it's really difficult to get out of this thing's range. The Stone Curse really only has 2 weaknesses, the first being its 10-foot movement speed. But if you unleash a Stone Curse in a small room, that doesn't matter, the party can't run away anyway. Its second weakness is vulnerability to bludgeoning damage. But since most martial characters use either slashing or piercing damage, your party might not discover this vulnerability. So unless you want your entire party dead and turned to stone by this alchemical monstrosity, be careful of the Stone Cursed. Keeping on our theme of weird creatures though, we're going with the grung wildling. This humanoid frog is surprisingly powerful for being a CR1 creature. It comes packed with a great selection of spells, cure wounds, spike growth, and plant growth. Additionally, the weapons for this creature are super poisonous. With the poison, the grung shortbow does 11 points of damage on average. Not only that, but the skin of the grung is also poisonous. If you try and grapple the grung or just make contact with the skin, your character must make a DC 12 Constitution saving throw. On a failure, your character is poisoned, but the grung also have variants for the poison. Depending on the grung's color, a character will be affected by a different condition. 2 of my favorite conditions are imposed by the blue grung and the red grung. The blue grung forces a character to make a loud noise at the start and end of their turn, while the red grung forces a character to use their action to eat food on their turn. The blue grung can really limit spellcasters if they require a spell with verbal components, and the red grung really hurts martials because they can't use their action to attack. And on top of all of this, the great spells, the high damage, and the poison effects, the grung has a 16 AC and 27 hit points. This is not a weak creature that will go down in a hit or two for low level parties. If the grung wildling rolls high on initiative and is able to cast spike growth on the party's martial characters, well, you have a serious problem on your hands. So for all you DMs out there, don't sleep on the frog druid when you're planning encounters. It punches far above its CR, and don't even get me started when it's in actual groups. And speaking of things that are deadly in groups, we have to talk about the drow. Our edgy elves are here for one reason and one reason only, their fairy fire hand crossbow combo. Essentially, one drow attacker casts fairy fire. This fairy fire grants advantage to all the other drow which are attacking creatures that fail to save. Those drow then attack with their hand crossbows. Now the hand crossbows have alright damage, but they also have a DC 13 Constitution saving throw against poison. The poison is bad enough, but if you fail by 5 or more, you are unconscious. That's right, your character is instantly knocked out of the fight. 1 or 2 drow you can deal with, but when the saving throws really start stacking up, that's when they become a huge problem for lower level parties. Fighting drow can quickly turn into a death spiral as party members are falling unconscious, other party members are trying to fight without them, or spending their whole action to try and wake up another fellow party member. But the advantage of the drow just keeps on building and building and building. When you enter a death spiral versus the drow, it's almost impossible to get out of. That's why all DMs out there have to be so careful when using these enemies. Next up, we have a creature that's kind of like a drow, really good in numbers, but it's an army of one. I'm talking about the Choker. So here's the thing, when you first look at the Choker, you think, alright, this is a good stat block that we can put to use. The Choker makes 2 tentacle attacks at a range of 10 feet that do average damage, maybe even a bit below average damage. Now the hidden twist is that this tentacle attack can not only grapple but restrain a target. And if you're being grappled by the Choker and they score a critical hit against you, you're basically done, as you cannot breathe or speak until the grapple ends. But through all this, you're probably thinking, well, that's fine. Its damage isn't insane, its hit points aren't that high. The party should be able to deal with this thing. Yet the Choker has a feature called Aberrant Quickness, which basically allows it to take a second action. That means the Choker can take 4 attacks on its turn, and if all those attacks hit, you're looking at an average of 20 damage. If your party doesn't have a dedicated frontline tank, or you're just worn down after a previous combat, the Choker can cut through a low-level D&D party. All it takes is 1 turn for party members to start dropping like flies. Really, the only safe way to deal with a Choker is to take it out before it takes its turn. Again, easier said than done because this thing can climb on walls and slip through small narrow cracks so that the party can't really hit it. In the right encounter, which really takes advantage of all the Choker's best qualities, this thing is a nightmare. So be careful if you're deploying Chokers in your next D&D campaign. And finally, I would be remiss if I did not talk about the Shadow. Shadows are notorious in D&D 5th edition. They pose a threat for low-level and high-level parties alike. They're immune or resistant to like half the damage types in 5th edition. They can hide in dim light or darkness as a bonus action, and can squeeze through openings of only an inch wide. But what really makes them terrifying is their legendary Strength Drain attack. Now for lower level parties, 2d6 plus 2 necrotic damage is no joke. A Shadow can knock characters unconscious in one touch. But beyond that is their ability to drain a character's strength by 1d4. And if a character's strength reaches 0, they instantly die, and then are revived 1d4 hours later as a Shadow. Look, if you're rocking with a spellcaster with 8 strength, it only takes 2 attacks from a Shadow to potentially instantly kill you. And if you're a strength-based martial character, in which everything comes from that strength score, it being drained will severely cripple your character. Shadows are incredibly dangerous and should not be messed with. At this point, I simply refuse to unleash Shadows against parties that are below 3rd level, because otherwise characters just do not have the tools to deal with these creatures. So what's an encounter you can deploy for low-level parties that will be fun and engaging? Well, check out this video right here. It's an encounter that you can run for a level 1 party that will be epic. And thank you for entering the dungeon.